Okay, so this is going to be kind of a little part two from the last one. So this idea of how does learning about code translate to using a content creation tool like Cavalry, right? So we created a grid. So just to, let's see here. Well, I was thinking about a couple different variations that I might do from the example I worked up at the very beginning, just again to demonstrate a few of these points. So let's go back into the rectangle shape here. So we have this shape, right, that we can modify. Let's go back to the very beginning. So, I can change this corner radius. And again, there's this idea of, like, when do things happen in this idea, this kind of computational thinking idea in the indice. So just as we would create a for loop and we would say, hey, let's create a random color and let's randomly, select the ID for it, and then we'll use that color for the shape. We can also use random in some of the attributes for the shape, so that every time a shape is generated, it says, oh, hey, I'm going to randomize this value, this value, this value. So let's go to the corner radius that I've been messing with. And again, we'll go to add behavior. And let's go ahead and say random. And you have to be a little careful here as you look at it. It didn't seem like it did that much, but as I roll over, you can see that there's some variation, say something like this. So again, what kind of numbers did it generate? And Cavalry is really great by saying, hey, associated with this shape, there's a random, I can't remember what they call these, behaviors, I think, for the corner radius. And if I hold down Option and double click it, it says, hey, it's going to be between 0 and 10. And as you can see, as I crank that number up, I get something a lot more obvious. Let's make this so we get maybe a little bit of rounding. Let's just make that, 4 is pretty good, right? Right. So now I've got several different shapes. I've got several different randomized variations of the rectangle because it's randomizing the way the radius is working. In fact, let's turn that maximum down a little bit. And the nice thing, of course, in a robust tool like this is that we can animate all these parameters. We could do this in code, but it'd be tricky to maybe keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention here, again related to the code, is so in fact, I'm wondering if this will be better to show this way. No, let's do it right here. So right now I have this distribution happening. And what if I like the randomness itself, but I don't like this particular random? We've already done this, right? So we have random that says here's the minimum and the maximum, but right underneath this is this idea of seed. So as we're running through the seed every single time, in fact, let's look at this. Let's find one that I can pinpoint. It's always going to be the same. Let's look at this little grouping down here. So as I rotate through, every single time I get the same pattern, right? Because it has a seed value set at 0. So it has a randomized sequence of numbers, but it picks the same randomized sequence of numbers right through here. And if I want a different one, if I don't like this, I'll just put in a different seed, and you can see this area is going to be slightly different as it goes through here, right? And so this is, of course, this is the seed that I'm using for the corner radius. I could go over to the one that's doing color, so let's look at that one. So we have this red one here, right? It comes through, it's orange, it's red, and it disappears. Well, maybe I don't like that. So now what I'm doing is changing where the index is selecting the color value, right? And if it gets to the point that it chooses an index value that exceeds what we have here in the color array, right, 0 through 4, then it basically says, oh, I don't have one of these colors, so I'll make this no color or no fill, right? So it basically says null is the way that it would do this. All right, so I have this randomized set going on. Let's do one more. So I like these shapes. What if I did something with, I don't know, let's do the star. Right, so I just put a star in there. It's a little big. I haven't used one of these before. Let's make this a little bit smaller. All right. So because I had the duplicator selected, it added that. In fact, that's actually not what I wanted to do. Let's go back here. Let's see here. It created its own for that. So let's get back out of that. Okay. So with nothing selected, I'm going to create a star right at the center. And now I'm going to scale this down. So this is just its single object. What I want to do is put that into the duplicator, right? So here's this input shape. And if I click on it, again, first tutorial I talked about, or video, whatever these are, it said 0 rectangle shape, right? So it has one item, and the index value for this one is 0. Well, you know what I want to do? Let's add the star shape. So let's put this star shape in there. All right, and if I click on it, you can see I have an ID number 0 and an ID number 1. And down here for the duplicator, it says I'm going to use shape ID number 0. But I can also put shape ID number 1 in there. Oh, let's hide the star shape, right? So it's now putting those in there. I'm going to, let's scale down that star shape. It's just a little bit big. All right. Back to the duplicator. So I can put that back to 0. I could put it at 1. Once again, I could also come back to say, you know what, let's add a behavior. Let's call this random. That random happens to go between 0 and 1. And of course, I have all these gray stars here. I could create another, I could just leave them gray. Let's do this again. So here's a star shape, and it has this in here. It has 5 sides. You know what? Every time I create one of these, let's create random again. That one, and let's make this between 0 and 6, I guess. Oh, and the last thing too, of course, this star shape has a fill, so let's just go ahead and get that color array so that it shares those. So we have this total non-destructive system that allows me to do all of these things, right? And again, the idea that random, it's very similar to our code. Random seed, exactly what we're talking about. So we could come back and change how they happen to appear on the screen. Let's go back to the duplicator. Does it have a seed function in here? Oh, actually, I thought it had a seed. Right, but I could go back to the array, which is kind of driving the whole thing anyways. Right, so I can change which one happens to be what inside this, the array system. So, first of all, Cavalry is way wicked cool. And this is just an example based on the grid idea. I mean, there's so many different things. I haven't even started playing with fall off and all this stuff. But more importantly, again for this video, is this idea that this kind of thinking, this modular thinking, this order of operations, these kind of functions that we've been using, the idea of index, all of these ideas will find their home in these software packages because they're built on code anyways, and these things are kind of exposed. Even if you're not going to do any of the coding, the fundamental ideas are there. All right, thanks for watching.